And we have one message just up to the topic. So will we see this third world war?
Well, remember Einstein? He said, I don't know what will be the methods of World War III, but the Fourth World War will be waged with sticks and stones. So the realization that the Third World War could mean the end of civilization, this realization, this idea should deter us from dangerous steps globally.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jose Perdo, Man-Made Survival, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today because today's video, quite frankly, is pretty important. And you know, this video that I'm doing right now, I'm doing it pretty late at night. It's already 2:17 in the morning, and I was editing the videos, or you know, the podcast that I'm gonna be releasing next week. And then, you know, this information came out today, or technically yesterday and the day before, where you know, we were really close to World War III, and I'm gonna be showing you this today. And you know, I'm gonna be releasing this one on Saturday, Saturday, June 26th, because I really want to go ahead and put this one through and release it as fast as I can, because this one is more time sensitive, because it really shows how fast we can actually go into World War III without even us knowing anything about it. You know, the war will start before we even know that it started. And by the time that we find out, we're probably going to see nukes flying. Because, I mean, quite frankly, we don't know how fast, you know, the countries will start pulling triggers on nukes. But if that's going to be their very first, you know, their strongest foot forward, then they're going to do that. And next thing we know, we get that message like they did in Hawaii back in 2018, I think it was, where it freaked everybody out. And, you know, we can get that message all throughout the United States. So we have to make sure that we pay attention to all of this and that we're prepared all the time. If you're being procrastinating with your preparedness and you have the money in the bank, you know, just sitting there, not doing anything, not earning you any interest or anything like that, then I would really suggest that you go ahead and buy the things that you're lacking. You know, I give you the 14 categories that you have to take care of. And if you have not taken care of any of those and you have the money for it, then you should go ahead and do it. And on the other hand, if you don't have the money, you know, just to pour into preparedness for the next several days or weeks, then, you know, continue to do your baby steps. You know, you can only prepare until something happens. And we do have to, you know, keep in mind that this threats of war, where we have come, you know, seconds away from going into war, it has happened in the past. And thank God that it has been diverted. But we cannot always count on that luck, on that blessing, or just on them talking crap that they're going to do something when they know they're not. But one day we're going to find out that they actually did, you know. For very many people, 9/11 was something that happened suddenly. We did not know was coming. And, you know, it was something that a lot of people could not believe. They could not believe their eyes, either being in New York and watching it themselves, or, you know, looking at the TV and seeing the towers go down. You know, I'm comparing that to something like this that could happen suddenly, that we would not find out anything about until it was already a fact. So that is the reason why I think that this one is more important. Now, as you heard Vladimir Putin say in the beginning of the video, you know, as I opened this podcast, he quoted Einstein saying that, you know, he didn't know what type of weapons we would use during World War III, but he knew that we were going to be using sticks and stones to fight World War IV. So that pretty much implies that this next war that we're going into can become so not only dangerous but devastating, that it could actually blow away all sorts of you know, societies anywhere around the world. And we really have to prepare for that, because we know that simply EMPs can do that to one country. As I've shared with you here time and time again, you know, EMPs will, within a 24-month period, it can make the population of the United States decrease by 90 to 95%, just in 24 months. And the very simple reason being is because people lack water and food, which of course are the two main things that we need. But once those things, are taken away and people start freaking out, the very next thing is going to be security. And a lot of people may have guns and everything like that, but when you have thousands of people freaking out coming through your area, you may not be able to defend them properly if you're not prepared. So that is the reason why we have to pay attention. Now, before I get into what happened, over there by Russia and everything, I do want to address what happened yesterday or the day before, or, by the time you listen to this, it has been a few days, but what Joe Biden said. And all of this ties together because, as I was doing the research and I was reading all of this news that came out and I was putting this podcast together, it kind of clicked. But I'm going to be sharing that with you at the end. But I do want to address what he said right now, so we can transition into what can happen here in the United States and what can happen out there. Now, Biden gave some remarks about gun control earlier today, or, several days ago. And I'm getting this article from townhall.com, and the article title is, Biden reminds gun owners the government has nuclear weapons. Speaking from the East Room of the White House Wednesday afternoon, President Joe Biden reintroduced his extreme gun control agenda, advocating for a ban on modern sporting rifles and reminding lawful gun owners that the federal government has nuclear weapons. And I want to show you a video, or, the video of him actually saying those words, which, you really have to pay attention because he couldn't string a full sentence together. But you pretty much get the, the idea of what he said. I want to let you watch it and then I'm going to comment on it. Here it is.
Second Amendment from the day it was passed limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you want to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that there's always been the ability to rationally limit the type of weapon that can be owned and who can own it.
All right, so the reason that is really important is because he knows the type of agenda that he wants to pass, right? And he understands that it's going to provoke a certain population or a certain demographic in the United States. A lot of people are probably going to rise, and they're going to, there's going to be protests and maybe even, a standoff with the government. We don't know. But the point is that the Biden administration understands, what kind of reaction he's going to get from the people. Now, I do want to mention something about January 6th. Quite frankly, I really thought that there was going to be a total different outcome on January 6th, especially when, when we're looking at the news live, and I did a live show here, which, YouTube took down. But when we saw that the people were inside the Capitol building, we thought that was it, that it was going to be something that we have never seen before. And I mean something more than what it actually was, more than people walking around looking like they were in a museum or something like that. And, actually something happening where, all the hundreds of thousands of citizens that were there would actually take Capitol building and, demand the government for doing, what they wanted. That did not happen. And it's a good thing that it didn't happen because, of course, that's where you can see the beginning of a civil war, which didn't happen. Now, with this being, in place, Biden coming out and saying, I want to get rid of all guns, have a magazine capacity, limit and everything. So he understands that certain people are going to get pissed. And will those people rise? I don't know. Again, with what happened on January 6th, it changed my total perspective of everything. Because, all the things that you heard on the right leading up to that day was that, the 3%ers were going to be there and they were going to be, armed, and they were going to be in the outskirts of Washington, D.C., ready for the president to say, I need your help. And they would rush in, and then all the citizens being there. And, there was just a lot of chatter going around. And I'm not talking about getting involved with Q or anything like that. It's just other people who are hearing things from Mike Glendale and from Cindy Powell and from a bunch of other people that never turned out to be true. And, we were just fed a bunch of crap that it really upset a lot of people. Now, with this, it might be a different, outcome. We don't know. Now I'm in a position where I have to wait and see and see something happening before I even believe it. But the Biden administration is taking all the steps necessary to actually, dwarf any type of uprising. And the next article actually shows this, which is really important as well, because now anybody can be put in a domestic terrorist list, whether or not you're actually extreme or anything like that. All right. And I don't want to get into the politics of it. I just want to give you the facts of the things that are happening. This one comes from MLN.com, and the title says, White House doc shows plan to use threat of domestic terrorism for gun control. Is the White House using the threat of domestic terrorism to institute gun control? According to a White House document titled The National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism, gun control is a crucial component of Joe Biden's plan. The document says that there is a rise in domestic violent extremists, which they call it DVE. It highlights the biases against minorities population as one of the factors of the growth of DVEs. It also states that those that believe the federal government is overreaching its power are at risk for becoming extremist, and the perceived government overreach will almost certainly continue to drive DVE radicalization and mobilization to violence. All right, so Biden went ahead and just, cut or tried to cut any type of uprising right now at the knees. So nothing actually does happen. And, just by the wording of what I'm showing you here that was from the paper, they're saying that anybody who perceives the government overreach will almost certainly continue to drive people to become radicalized. And the U.S. government has actually blurred the line between the Second Amendment, what it's actually for, and preserving themselves to continue being in power. Because the Second Amendment was not for hunting or anything like that. It was to actually, being able to fight off a government that became tyrannical. But, the government, even though it's tyrannical, it doesn't want to give power. So it blurs the line and it makes sure that there's no line set to where they can be challenged. They want to go ahead and take guns away or, any type of resistance away so they can continue doing whatever they want to do. And to this, even if he's successful, this is going to be very dangerous for us in the future, and not necessarily coming from Washington, but it could also come from outside, or it could be from both. All right. And I wanted to go ahead and address this right now because, it's going to make sense later. And I'm going to make sure that I address it at the end, and I'm going to connect the dots for you. Because now I want to shift to what happened off the coast of Hawaii. Now we're shifting from what happened locally, because, or not locally, but, in the United States, because, that is something to mention, but it's not like there's a lot of news for it. But now I want to shift it to this, and then I'm going to connect the dots later. This comes from the Daily Mail in the UK, and it says, the title says, Russian fleet 35 miles off Hawaii practices sinking aircraft carrier as U.S. Navy strike group moves into the area, and F-22 stealth fighters in Pearl Harbor are placed on standby. All right, so just very quick. Pretty much what this article was about is that, the United States and NATO have been doing a bunch of drills off the coast of Russia, in the Black Sea, and we have been putting, defense systems and actually attack systems in the border with Russia, and they have been saying for years. This is something that has been happening for years. They've said, don't do it because you're going to provoke us. You're going to provoke World War III. If you continue to put all of these systems right at our border, we're going to feel threatened and we're going to have to do something about it. And they said, for all the European nations, if you are hosting any type of NATO base or, nukes or anything like that, you're going to get nuked first. As the ICBM is flying from Russia to the United States, you're already nuked. So that made a lot of the, the NATO nations, pretty much back off a little bit until the United States, to cool it off. But that did not take away the ambition of NATO, the ambition of the United States, which, first it was against Russia, now they're involved in China. But anyways, all of this is creating the environment where really Russia and China are getting fed up with what the United States is doing. And quite frankly, the United States is coming to a point where we really don't have the resources, or very soon we'll not have the resources to continue doing what we're doing. So we really have to pay attention to this. And Russia came to Hawaii, 35 miles off the coast, to do this drill, to sink this, mock aircraft carrier, to send a message to Washington saying, if you can come to our sea, we can come to yours. Because, they could have done that exercise in the Black Sea or closer to home. But they came to Hawaii, saying that they would blow it off the map, and that would pretty much blind the United States, because as I understand that there's several systems that the United States really depends on, because it's so far off the mainland. But anyways, I have a video that I want to show you, because you need to listen to how the reaction is from someone who used to be in the government. I can't remember what she was. She's gonna tell you what she was in the video, but just listen to it, and I have several thoughts about what she says. It's gonna be like 2 minutes, so here it is.
Back with us now, former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland. KT is the author of the book Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. KT, let's deal with the news coming in. The reports that for the second time in about a month, U.S. F-22 stealth fighters scrambled, placed on standby. A Russian fleet currently carrying out the largest war game since the Cold War. KT, we're hearing they practice sinking an aircraft carrier. This just happened about 35 miles off of Hawaii. What do you say?
Look, it's extraordinary that we just had the Biden-Putin summit. And going into the summit, Biden gave up all of his leverage. He gave up the pipeline. He gave up Russians on the Ukrainian border. He gave up the whole ransomware hacking thing. He gave up everything. And then when he went into that meeting, Liz, is when this exercise started, where the Russians have had, this is now the largest exercise in the post-Cold War period. And the Russians, it's such a provocative exercise. And yet, what did President Biden do? He sat down at the meeting. I'll tell you, my advice to him or to Donald Trump or anybody, you do that to the United States, you have an exercise like that right at our territorial waters, you get up and leave. Because the Russians, that was a deliberate slap in the face. And the Russians to be now doing the next step, which is to sink, mock sinking an aircraft carrier, that's sort of thank you very much for our summit meeting. We just loved it. And President Putin got a international audience, and he got the stage all by himself, and this is what he's doing.
Yeah, we hear you. So what you're saying, appeasement of Putin doesn't work, right?
Never works. In the Cold War, Liz, we always had a joke that the defense policy of some countries in Europe was they would get tennis shoes, they would get sneakers. Why? Because they figured that if the Russian bear came, they would run faster than anybody else and they would never get caught. It's the same kind of attitude now. Appeasement never works. It certainly never works with Putin. I've studied this guy for decades. I've even gone back and looked at his dissertation. He is a bully, and he will keep pushing until he meets some kind of resistance. He met no resistance in Geneva. He got an American president who looked tired and old and kind of confused. And so what's Putin doing? Trying to pretend to sink an aircraft carrier.
All right, so what is important about that video is the attitude, okay? The attitude that this lady has towards Russia. And you got to think the same thing can be happening. People can be whispering in Putin's ear, and actually something like that did happen several years ago. The reports, when all this came out, the reports came out that there was this one guy that gave Putin the idea of nuking a nearby island close to Ireland, kind of kind of to flex its muscle against the United States, saying that they were serious about protecting their border. Okay, and you got to think, if we have the United States, elites talking a certain way, talking with NATO, doing drills and everything like that, getting ready for a war, which of course, in the past I showed you the video and actually the quote from somebody in the Ukraine, one of the, the officers in the military, saying that they were getting ready for a war that they know is going to be with Russia. They understand they're going to go to war. They just don't know when yet. So they're getting ready for it. It's in the books. It's scheduled. They just don't know when it's going to happen. They don't know when the nukes are going to start flying. But the point is that if the United States has people like that and Russia has people like that, thankfully they didn't do it, maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe Putin didn't want to entertain that idea. But what if the circumstances were right, to where Putin said, you know what, maybe my advisors are right. I'm going to nuke a nearby island, make it disappear, so, the West can understand that I'm not playing and they can back off. Or what if we do the same thing close to their island, or, to their nation or something like that? Things can escalate very quickly, which is exactly what happened when this UK ship went through. And this next article goes along with the second one that I'm going to be reading to you, but I want you to pay close attention to the way that it's worded, because it's going to give us a clue about how the government is feeling about this incident. This is also from the Daily Mail, and the title of the article is "Change Course or I'll Fire. Astonishing Threat Russian Ship Made to HMS Defender," as video shows one of Putin's attack jets flying over a Royal Navy warship after dropping bombs in its path as it sails past Crimea. This is the moment a Russian jet buzzed low over HMS Defender as it sailed past Crimea on Wednesday, before warning shots and bombs were all allegedly fired at the Royal Navy destroyer's path after it was accused of crossing into territorial waters. The British Type 45 destroyer was told, "If you don't change course, I'll fire," after it entered the 12-mile limit of Crimea's territorial waters near Cape Fialet in the Black Sea. Moscow boasted that an Su-24 dropped 4 bombs in the vessel's path after it refused to back down, and warning shots were fired from their patrol ship. But Britain has flatly denied the claims, saying that the destroyer stayed in international waters and no shots were fired. Okay? Now, this is the important thing that I want you to get from this article. The UK government is denying it completely, saying it didn't happen. But we already know when the government, denies something, more than likely did happen. And when they're denying something, it's because they're trying to keep the population, calm down, and they don't want them to know much of anything. So the next article is not going to make sense because it's going to contradict itself, and it's from the same publication. So now we're wondering, or at least I'm wondering, are we being fed misinformation from the UK government? It sounds like it is, because now look at the same, Daily Mail article, but a different article, but the same website. Russian jets thunder overhead. The angry thought of cannon fire rings out. Our crew ready Sea Viper missiles. Wars have started over less. Read the dramatic Mail eyewitness report as Vladimir Putin's gunboat opens fire on HMS Defender. The angry thought of cannon fire ring out on the port side of HMS Defender as I crouch beside the bridge on my hastily adorned flame-retardant gloves. We are being pursued furiously by a pair of Russian Coast Guard vessels, while every couple of minutes Russian jets pass thunderously overhead. The deafening roar of supersonic aircraft filling my ears is an unsettling yet enthralling experience. Then, as part of Defender's response, her deadly arsenal of Sea Viper missiles are brought to readiness. After a second burst of enemy cannon fire, I overheard an update intended for her captain that we have 2 hard kill missile effective. For a second, I wondered just what might happen next. Wars have started over less. All right, so this article is really important because it contradicts what the other one was saying. On the first article, the UK government is pretty much saying, it's all okay, nothing happened. They didn't really give us any warning shots. We continue, sell like nothing. Nothing happened. But all the while, this reporter that was within this ship, he was able to tell everything that was going on inside. They were getting ready to be able to shoot down those airplanes that were coming through. So, which one is the real one? Which one are we being fed? Are we being fed misinformation? Are we being gaslighted? What's going on here? More than likely, what the reporter was saying was the truth, because, the Russian government, the army is saying that this did happen, and they did, in fact, give the warning shots. And actually, this brings me to the next headline. This from express.co.uk. World War III warning. Russian threatens to bomb UK ships, putting officials spark alarm bells. A top Russian official has declared any UK vessel which passes too close to Crimea Peninsula will be bombed. He said today, quote, "What can we do? We can appeal to common sense, demand respect for international law. If this does not help, we can bomb not only the direction, but also on target if our colleagues do not understand. I warn everyone violating the state borders of the Russian Federation under the slogan of free navigation from such provocative steps, because the security of our country comes first." All right, so pretty much what they're saying is that they're not going to play this crap that, the United States plays with China, where we actually go into the territorial waters, we get very, very close, and then, nothing happens. China has been threatening us time and time again that they're going to sink our ships, that they're going to blow our airplanes out of the air, that if we continue to do, helping Taiwan and looking after the origin of COVID-19, and then we're going to have a fierce showdown with nuclear weapons and everything like that. That has been the rhetoric with China, and I shared with you that that podcast this past week. But now Russia is saying we're not going to play that game. All right, if you come close again, we're gonna bomb you out of the water, and that pretty much set the alarm bells on everyone, not just Washington, but also the UK and everybody involved in NATO. So you can bet your bottom dollar that more than likely they're going to do it again, because they want to provoke this war. Whether they want to provoke it, maybe because right now the United States and NATO have the upper hand, because they understand that China is coming very close to being able to go toe-to-toe with the United States all by itself. But if Russia and China come together to fight the United States and NATO, they might win. I gotta be honest with you, because of the technological advances that China and Russia have, compared to NATO and the United States, plus how many people can actually go into war. Because as you know, China has the biggest army in the world. It can be something that can happen. So we really have to see and pay attention. All right, so. This brings me to what I was talking about China, okay? And China is something that we have to take serious, because we did not know this, but we were very, very close to going to World War III with them also, okay? And this is something that has been repeated time and time again. And it's something that I've asked you here repeatedly on this podcast is, how many wars can the United States be in effectively? If we go to war against Russia, where NATO is not involved or China is not involved, can we win that war? Maybe. What about if the United States against China without anybody getting involved? Can we do that? Possibly. What about Iran? What about, any other country? And, Turkey's one of them now, but if we have those type of conflicts, can we fight everybody at once? Can we fight Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and all the other ones that do not like the United States very much? Can we do it? And the answer is absolutely not. NATO will have to get involved, And even if NATO gets involved, we don't know if we might be able to defeat them. We're going to have to wait and see. But this next article comes from The Express, and I'm only going to give you the title because, you know, it really shows how close we came to World War III. China and U.S. seconds from triggering World War III in South China Sea, jet clash ready to fight. So pretty much what that article said is that, you know, there was a fleet of airplanes that were getting really close to the Chinese border, and, you know, China scrambled their fighters. They met the airplanes that were getting really close, and they threatened them that if they went any further, that they were going to shoot them down, and they were ready, you know, for a fight. That there was no hesitating on starting World War III. That they don't care. That they feel like it would be a privilege for them to start World War III. So, if they're determined to do so, how much more determined would Russia and China put together be? All right, maybe we need to think about that. Now, the Chinese government has had some advancements in their military, and this next article proves that. This is from SputnikNews.com, and the article says, new Chinese submarine armed with missiles capable of covering the entire U.S., report says. China's newly commissioned nuclear-powered submarine, dubbed the Type 094A, is equipped with ballistic missiles capable of hitting targets at a distance of 10,000 kilometers, which is 6,200 miles. The most powerful in the country, the South China Morning Post reported, citing a military source. Before the upgrade, the submarine was capable of firing an inferior JL-2 that could only hit the northeast United States, the source said, noting that currently it is able to cover the whole American continent. The newspaper also reported, citing a military expert, that the new weapon would boost China's ability to retaliate after a nuclear strike. All right, so the reason that is important is because the United States takes pride with all the submarines that we have and the capabilities of those submarines. You know, it has always been told and it has been said that really our secret weapon is our submarine fleet, because, you know, it's pretty strong. We have very many of them, and we could actually go to toe-to-toe against Russia and probably win when it comes to, you know, to that type of arena. Now, Russia and China are not staying behind, right? They have been steadily increasing the technology and becoming better, because right now, quite frankly, and you know this, that Russia can overtake the United States technologically. And China is overtaking the United States technologically as well in other aspects that is not so much the military, but, you know, with AI and business and other things that could actually cripple the United States in the long run. So when you combine both, you know, the Russian military surpasses the U.S. militarily as far as technology is concerned, with hypersonic missiles, with hypersonic ICBMs, with hypersonic cruise missiles and everything else. And then, you know, China has the advantage on AI and all these other things. When you see that they have this, you know, upgrade to the submarine fleet, then it should really be something that we have to pay attention to, especially if you're in the coast of the United States. Because we know that they do plan, you know, it has been publicly said, even by the Russian government, that if they were to attack the United States, they would use submarines not only from the East Coast and West Coast, but also on the Gulf Coast. So we would have missiles coming at us from 3 different directions. And they do have, you know, the Russians do have a weapon that can create tsunamis as tall as the Empire State Building. And, you know, it can go, I think, 30 miles inland. So that could be great devastation for all the coast. So that is the reason why we have to pay attention to all of this and be prepared. All right, so what I want to show you right now is a video. And this is from True News, okay? And they're saying that there's this this man called Miles Guo, who broadcasted on June 20th, 2021, that, you know, that China will launch pretty much an attack, possibly this summer, maybe in the fall. And if it's true, then, you know, you have very limited amount of time to get prepared. If you remember when I did this type of podcast in the past, where information about World War III came out, then I told you that according to the Pentagon and to all the the tests that they run through the computers and everything, the simulations, they did say that within the next 5 to 10 years, or excuse me, within the next 10 years, that China would be able to surpass the United States militarily. And what did I tell you in this podcast? I said, well, if that's the case, if that is true, okay, that means that the United States would have to launch an attack against China before that day comes, while the United States would be stronger than the Chinese. So let's reduce the timeline, okay? That would mean that the Pentagon would have 5 to 8 years to be able to fight the Chinese and overtake them while we still have the upper hand, right? But maybe the timeline has been accelerated to the next few months. I mean, we'll see, right? Quite frankly, I cannot verify this information. I don't know if it's true. We're going off on a limb. And the reason that I decided to add this to the podcast is because it pretty much goes with everything that we have been seeing in the past several days, that Russia is becoming more bold, and they're going to the Hawaiian, waters, and they're sinking ships, sending a message to the United States saying, we can come all the way out here, to your border and bomb the crap out of you. Because, those submarines and those aircraft carriers can very easily bomb all of Hawaii, come through and come towards the West Coast. So you have to pay attention to this information. And again, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's going to happen. Hopefully it doesn't. There has been plenty times in the past where we thought we were going to go to war very, very soon, and it never happened. Again, it may be a blessing. They may just be talking snap and they're not really going to do anything. We don't know. But eventually the day will come. All right. So the video or that clip is about 5 minutes long. I'm going to try to edit it. Just looking at my notes here, it's about 5 minutes long. So pay close attention and listen to everything he had to say, right? Here it is.
Well, another person who has issued a chilling warning is Chinese billionaire Miles Guo. And I follow him on his news website because he has an extensive network of Chinese people who want to see the China Communist Party collapse.
Yes, they're allies in the war against communism.
Well, Miles Guo is a Chinese patriot, and he wants his country to be set free of communism, and he has paid a price. The Chinese communists have come after him. He's a defector, in exile here in the United States. He issued a warning this week. He said that his sources have told him that China is going to release a second biological weapon against the United States this summer.
Yes. Rick, we have a soundbite from a speech that Miles Guo gave on this subject. It was in Chinese. So what we've done for people, especially those who listen as you're driving, I've read the subtitles, English subtitles. You'll hear me, but this is Miles Guo giving his speech on a bioweapon attack this summer and also a coming war with Taiwan.
Yes, he said that China is going to attack Taiwan before they attack us.
As a distraction.
The distraction will be the war in Taiwan, so that everybody's focused on a war, and they're not paying attention to China releasing another biological weapon, another virus inside the USA. Let's watch it.
Based on the true history and civilization of the Chinese people, we're here delivering the message to the West that we're all humans. We will never become the enemies of the West. The Chinese people are not going to, have never, and will never invade or occupy any territories or any countries or any Western countries. Never, ever. So all the announcements I made in this regard today are for and on behalf of the peaceful Chinese people Only a small fraction of the Chinese people, no more than 200 families of the Chinese Communist Party, are the monopolists of the power and the economy of China. They are the culprits of committing crimes against the West, attempting to lead the West and forcibly occupy the West's resources, releasing the virus, other incidents that may occur, as well as the one I'm announcing today. Now, the most critical thing that I'm going to tell you is that we've received the accurate intelligence. First, the CCP is attempting soon, probably at the end of this summer and the beginning of this fall, to release the coronavirus in the US and the West once again. And the virus to be released this time will surely be more dangerous than the last one. We have accurate intelligence. We are informed that the CCP knows it very well. That following the G7 summit in 2021, with millions of deaths, hundreds of millions of people being infected with the virus in the entire world, and meanwhile all walks of life and in the world demanding the truth about the virus. The CCP is well aware that the truth will eventually be found out. Making political deals and bribing or threatening politicians are unlikely going to continue to work. The CCP has only two options. First, once the West is almost approaching the truth, they, the CCP, are going to invade Taiwan. So now, the CCP has made a series of military and political deployments. It's clearly decided in the CCP's internal meetings that so long as the West impose large-scale economic sanctions, even under the scenario of the threat of waging wars, then the CCP is just going to use the bioweapon to the fullest in the most exhaustive way. By quoting the words of the CCP's top leaders, since this weapon was developed to target the Americans, the white people, then we should transmit it to the US. We have been very successful using it in India. We should strive to inflict more damages on the West, on the United States and Europe. And it should be deployed without fear. If we want to use it, we should strike fear into the hearts of our enemies, to the point that they're terrified of us. Such decisions have been carried out by the communists in the past. I hope that when you, or the elites in the West, see and hear this message, you can take precautions and deploy protective measures. At the same time, the leadership of the CCP has decided that after the release of the virus, when the world is concerned about the origin of the virus, when the CCP can no longer cover it up, they will have to invade and annex Taiwan to divert the world's attention from the virus to Taiwan, so that no one would talk about the virus anymore. The CCP will plunge China and the Western countries into a state of war. And during that state of war, they will exploit that wartime international relations. All wars ultimately ended with trading political and economic resources, using war as a distraction. The CCP can obfuscate the true origin of the virus. They intend to force the West into peace talks through wars. The world will eventually give up on seeking accountability for the origin of the virus. So, what is the communist Chinese doing now? This is my message today. On behalf of the NFSC and the whistleblowers movement, to our peace-loving Western friends all over the world, be warned. In the past 4 weeks, all of the 300,000 or so U.S. citizens currently residing in Hong Kong and the 180,000 to 220,000 Americans residing in mainland China are being enumerated by the CCP's National Security Council Thousands of agents have been dispatched to surveil and enumerate them. That is, for all American citizens in mainland China and Hong Kong, their computers and cell phones are under surveillance. Their communication is monitored. Their personal information is being verified by the CCP's security apparatus. Citizens of Europe, the European Union, Japan, and other Western nations in China are subject to the same treatment. That is, members of the G7 and other nations that may demand the truth from the CCP, or the citizens of the countries that are able to participate in the war against the CCP in Taiwan, are being registered and tracked in China. It's already in a state of undeclared war. That was decided unanimously by the CCP's supreme leadership, the National Security Council. That's some heavy information that Miles Guo just shared.
If he's accurate, if his information is correct, that is chilling. Because he just said that his sources told him that China is going to release another bioweapon in the United States this summer or fall, plus go to war with the United States over Taiwan.
And that they are now tracking down every American or anybody in the West who might help America in defending Taiwan or attacking China. The citizens of the West are being enumerated, numbered.
Who are living in Hong Kong or mainland China.
And they're being surveilled, their cell phones, their computers. You have to wonder, the Chinese, according to him, they have a plan for those 300,000 Americans, 120 to 220,000 on the mainland. About 500,000 Americans could become bargaining chips in a world war.
If they could round them up and put them in a detention camp, and you're right, they got a bargaining chip.
All right, so I hope you got the magnitude of that information. I don't know if it's true, whether it's going to happen or not. We're going to have to wait and see. But you do have to make preparations. If this information is accurate, then you're getting this information months before it happens. So let's say they do it late summer, sometime in the fall, then that means that, China and the United States share seasons. So when it's summertime here, it's summertime there. When it's winter over there, it's winter here. So they might launch an attack, if they actually do it, somewhere between, late August and, I don't know, in the middle of October or something like that. So probably by September. And, September is a symbolic date for the United States, or actually a symbolic month for the United States. So we really have to make sure that we're ready for all of this, okay? And that we look at all the information. Now, I want to give you this last headline before I start talking about the preparedness, because I really want to make a point with the preparedness. This from the Express, and it says, World War III mapped. The 6 places where World War III could break out in 2021. All right, so the article gives, different states and the reason why, but I'm just going to give you the 2 that would go toe-to-toe. Iran and the U.S., Iran and Israel, the U.S. and Turkey, Kashmir, which, would be India and I think it's Pakistan, U.S., North Korea, U.S. and China. But they forgot 2. The U.S. and Russia, and the U.S., I guess, its citizens. And now this is where I'm going to be connecting what I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast. If there is a uprising here in the United States because of gun confiscation, or, the government going crazy, labeling pretty much the entire half of the United States population a domestic terrorist and going to war against them locally, and there's some type of actual resistance and there's a fight, Russia and China will see that as the perfect timing for them to fight. Remember that prophecy given to us by Dmitry Duduman, saying that while the United States government is busy putting down an uprising in the middle of the country, Russia and China would attack the United States. And they would attack out of Mexico, Nicaragua, I think Colombia, and some other places. And Russia and China would not be alone. They would be helped by Germany and I think Italy. So that's why we have to look at this information. That's why what Joe Biden is doing is really critical. We have to look at it and really pay attention to it. Now, this is where I want to get into the preparedness. All right, I'm done with the news. Now let's get into what really, really matters. If it's true that we're about to go to war in the next several months, then you have several weeks to really have your plan in place. This is the reason why alliance is the very first thing that you have to look at when you're preparing. Because you have to know, by the time September rolls around, more than likely most students all throughout the country are going to be in school. Whether your child is in kindergarten or they're in college, you're going to have to know where they are and how they're going to get home in case something happens. If we have an EMP blown up over the United States, you're going to have to get to your children somehow very, very quickly, depending on how far away, you work from them. Those are the things that you have to look at right now in order for you to be prepared for when this happens. Hopefully there's no EMP. All right, if there's no EMP, but there are nukes flying everywhere, or at least there's the news did come out that China and the United States are going at it, because of Taiwan, then you have a very, very limited amount of time, a window of time when you can go and get your children from school, especially, if they're kindergarten through to 12th grade, or they're, young enough to be in the nursery, whatever the case may be. But not only do you have to know where your children are, you're going to have to know where your spouse is and how your spouse is going to get back to the house. And if your house is the bug out location for your entire family, then everything's going to have to already be in place. You're giving a heads up. If you're doing what I've been teaching you with preparedness, if you're doing properly the way that I'm doing teaching you preparedness, then that means that your alliance is taking care of their own category. That means right now would be time to start moving the guns, the ammo, the livestock, the gardens, the clothing, everything that these other members of your alliance are taking care of. Now is the time to move it to the place where everybody's gonna go bug out to. And if you're the one that they're gonna go to, then you need to go ahead and start taking the stuff in and placing it where it needs to go, storing it properly where it needs to go. All right, make sure you have the capacity of storing everything that they're bringing along. All right, but the point is that you need to know where everybody is, especially your younger children. And if you're gonna be if you work far away, because for example, I work about an hour and 20 minutes from where I live, and my kids only go several miles from my house. They go to school several miles from my house. I already have a plan in place on who's gonna go get my children, because if an EMP happens, it's gonna take me several days to get from where I work, because it's like 50 miles away. All right, and walking back, making it to the house, and then getting everybody to go to the bug out location. That's gonna take time, and within that amount of time, I'm gonna have to. Or I already know the communications, who is gonna be where, and what are the things that are gonna be brought or taken. So that is what I want to get across. All right. So that is the first thing, your alliance. That is gonna bring in communications very, very fast. Okay. Then security, because people more than likely going to start freaking out. Okay, especially if the lights suddenly go out. All right, if they do release a bioweapon along with a cyber attack and they turn everything off, then it's going to be a lot more difficult to get home, especially if all the street lights are not working and and you're in a heavily transit area like New York or someplace like that. Okay, so you have to think ahead. And now that we know this, if it actually does happen, then you're going to have to be on the lookout each and every day, because they can either bring up the timeline, or they can change their mind because they're being exposed and not do it at all. But hopefully nothing happens. That's the best thing. But be ready from today that you heard this podcast to the day that it actually happens. All right, the next thing is going to be your food and water. Be ready for the power to go out. Okay, that means that you don't start automatically eating the food that you stored. Put food on the ground. We're technically already in the summer months, all right? 3 months from now, 90 to 100 days from now is going to bring us into the fall. In the southern states where I live, in Alabama, it doesn't really get cold until November, December. Depends on the weather. So that means that if I was to, let's say, they do something in the next several weeks, and I already go ahead and put the food down on the ground right now, that means that by the time something like that happens, I'm going to be ahead of the game. And whatever I grew, this in the next several weeks and the next several months is what I'm going to be using for the winter until spring comes back around. And, we'll see what type of world we live in then. But the point is that you have to take the steps right now. You have the opportunity. You have the window of time wherever you live in the United States. And if you live in California and all those other places who are having droughts and you're being limited on how much water you can consume, then you really have to start making plans on living those places if you have the opportunity. If you have family members who live in, towards the east, and they don't have water restrictions, or they don't have any type of, droughts or anything like that, then I would really suggest for you to start talking to them and see if they'll allow you and your family to go that direction. But even if they don't, right now you still have the opportunity to buy extra water, because as far as I know, there's no restrictions on how much you can buy. They took away those limits a long time ago. So you should be able to buy several pallets of water and storing them in your home, or storing them in your bulk allocation, storing them, in your apartment, whatever the case may be. And be ready. Be ready for this to go down. Russia may get angry, may get pissed. There might be another ship coming through and they actually do blow it out of the water. That can happen because it almost happened a few days ago and nobody knew about it until after it had already happened. So that is the reason why we have to be ready. Wilderness training, this would be the time where people who think they are going to be fleeing into the woods as soon as something happens may not even happen at all. Because if there is an EMP or if there is bombs flying around, people are not going to want to go anywhere, especially if there is fallout. So make sure that if you're going to be looking at the map where more than likely you're going to be nuked, or there's going to be a nuke near you, just know that if there's a military installation anywhere near you that is important as a target, then you need to get away from it as fast as you can. And if you're, upwind, looking at the jet streams of the United States, you can kind of see whether or not you're in the path. There is a website, and now that I'm talking about that, let me go ahead and look for it live. You can Google it as Nuke Simulator, which I just did, and the website is nuclearsecrecy.com. And you can go on that website, and it's going to show you, all right, what you could expect from a nuclear bomb being detonated, especially when it's a ground detonation. So there's two types, air and ground. Air doesn't really disperse that much of a fallout because it's blown above the ground, so many miles above the ground. So the entire energy kind of goes down, and that's what destroys. If it goes down into the ground or low enough to lift dirt, then that's what gets mixed up with the radiation, and it gets spread by the jet stream. So look at the website. You can put in where you live. You can choose whatever city you want. You can either look at the ones that are more famous, or you could actually type it in. It'll take you down to your backyard if you want to, and where a detonation would happen and how far, depending on the intensity of the bomb, it would take that that fallout. So you have to look at that. And the 14 categories that I've been teaching you this entire time will come into play. And hopefully you have looked at it, you have seen what you're lacking, and the ones that make sense, you're gonna do. If you have no filters, get a filter. All right. If you have already 10,000 bullets and 30 guns, you don't need more guns. You don't need more bullets. You need something else. If you have no first aid kits, you know, nothing to take care of a cold or anything like that. If the doctors are taken out or the hospitals are no longer working, then you need to go ahead and get that. All right. That is the reason we have 14 categories. And I'm going to go ahead and give them to you to close this podcast. The 14 categories is your alliance and your plan. And we already talked about that. But the next thing is the 4 core things for the supply chain, which is food, water, energy, and medicine. And then the rest of it complements, and it will make your life a lot easier, which is tactical, communication, wilderness survival, bug out bag, bug out location, bug out vehicle, hygiene, and clothing. All right. And we have talked about those. And I really do feel like I need to do a podcast individually for that, because there's a lot more people listening to the podcast. And thank you so much for doing so. You know, even though the numbers don't really reflect on YouTube, they do reflect everywhere else in the speaker platform, in Brighteon and other places. So I'm very thankful that y'all are listening to the podcast, getting this information, sharing it with your friends and family. And I really do encourage you to continue doing that, because we all going to benefit from this. And we really have to come together as a community, and we have to be able to tell, you know, who's prepared and who's not, and not take advantage of the people who are prepared, because, you know, there's people out there who want to do that, but actually work together. All right. So we have to make sure that we do those type of relationships, and we can spot other people out and come together and create a more strong community, rather than tear it apart just because we're trying to get somebody else's stuff. All right, so remember, when the nukes fly, when the other the next bioweapon gets released, you're going to be the community leader, because you know exactly what to do. While everybody else is freaking out, you know, you can be the voice of reason and tell people exactly what they need to do in order to be prepared. And it's going to be up to you, especially if you're Christian. Not only to help other people, but to bring them the Christian message and calm your community and tell them that everything's going to be okay, but we have to work right now. All right. So let's hope that this war does not hit in the winter, because that's, you know, actually Jesus' words to his disciples. You know, he said, pray that, you know, nothing bad happens in the winter. And I know I'm paraphrasing it and I probably butchered it. But the point is that hopefully it does not happen in the winter, because that's when there's a lack of food, there's a lack of water, and everything is going to fly off the shelves. So that is the reason why you want to have your food stocked up. All right, so I want to go ahead and leave you with that. Please share this information with your friends and family. Hopefully I did a good job at showing you how important all of this is. And if you stay all the way to the end, please share this information with your friends and family. Please give us a like on whatever platform it is that you listen this through. Leave a comment, whatever it is that you want to do. Just help us get this message out. All right. And again, my name is Jose Prado. Remember, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.